What's up everyone, this is Abhishek Kochara. Today I want to tell you a few things that no one else is telling you about why Russia is invading Ukraine. So you all must have already heard about how Putin wants to demilitarize Ukraine and how he is averse to having NATO right at his doorstep, how he does not want Ukraine to join NATO under any circumstance whatsoever. You must have heard about all of this, and going off the deep end in more extreme news or in more extreme outlets, you must have heard about how Putin is a madman or how he has self-indoctrinated himself and he wants to bring all the Soviet era Soviet states back under Russian governance, or how he, or a bunch of other conspiracy theories, a bunch of other stuff like the Third Rome and stuff like that. But there are other very large things behind the scenes that are very significant. Let's start off with something familiar. Back in 2013, Russia annexed Crimea. Unfortunately, today Putin faces the question of sustenance. Russia is finding the situation with Crimea very unsustainable. There is a water shortage. There's a lot of dissatisfaction and discontent on the streets in Crimea, and all of the water flows through Ukraine. All of the water coming into Crimea flows through Ukraine. This is a very big problem, and on top of that, there is an energy problem in Crimea. Although Russia has managed to annex Crimea, they are finding it hard to hold it, not because of uprisings or insurgencies, but because it is turning out to be very infeasible to govern. The thing is, Crimea without other parts of Ukraine, or without the entirety of Ukraine, or without another huge chunk of Ukraine, is very hard to sustain on itself, because purely because of the nature of its location, and because of factors like availability of natural resources and the likes. This is proving to be a very difficult situation for Russia, especially considering the economic situation that Russia is in. Russia's economy is buckling under itself. This brings us to the next thing, the Russian economy. Russia's economy is failing, it's collapsing. Back when Russia invaded Ukraine, the West and the United States imposed a lot of sanctions. Western Europe passed a lot of bills and laws that made it very hard for Russia financially. A lot of efforts were made to devalue the Russian currency. A lot of efforts were made to isolate Russia, to somewhat pseudo isolate Russia financially, and all of those things did have major effects. A lot of those things did tank Russia's economy. Russia's currency devalued rapidly, and even back then, 7 years ago, even 5 years ago, and even as recently as 4 years ago, a lot of well-known people in the finance world, a lot of world leaders and a lot of famous businessmen have been talking about how the Russian economy is tanking and how they're losing money very quickly, and soon they'll be out of money, and they might take drastic steps because they will be cornered in a desperate position. These are discussions that have been going on for a long time in the international business forum, and this is a very important thing in context of the Russo-Ukrainian war, because Russia is quickly running out of money, especially over the past few years, even before the current sanctions that have been passed, the current laws that have been passed to isolate Russia completely after the war started. Even before that, over the past few years, governments have been cracking down on Russia, on Russian businessmen, on the Russian economy, and Russia has been finding it very hard to sustain itself financially. And the only quick way that Russia has out of this, because it is cornered, is to annex a neighboring country, a smaller country. But for Russia to take over a country like Ukraine would mean a massive inflow of income, in money, be it money wise, be it in terms of an economic boost. There would be a massive boost in economy. There would be a massive flow of cash. There would be a massive inflow of resources. This inflow of money and resources and benefits also ties in to another thing, which brings us to a third point: access to the Black Sea. Ukraine has key access to the Black Sea. I think Ukraine has about 18 seaports that are on the Black Sea. Taking control over these seaports would mean a massive influx of trade and a huge inflow of cash for Russia, because these are some of the busiest seaports. This would mean a great deal of trade activity, having a great say in the trade activity that goes on in the region, having a great control over that activity, being able to tax a lot of incoming goods and the like. And this would mean a huge boost in the strategic position that Russia currently holds in the Eastern European region, rise in the ranks. Already Russia is at the top, but this would mean that Russia would get the strength to manipulate that region with an iron fist. This is one of the main reasons that the West is so averse to Russia taking over Ukraine. But This has been very cleverly, all of these three reasons have been very cleverly veiled, pushed behind a veil, both by both by Russia and by the West. Because bringing these things out tilts things in favor for for both sides, and both of them do not want to play that game right now. The West is very averse to Russia having more power than it currently has, although most of its power right now is based on its nuclear arsenal and its military strength and its fuel and its cheap fuel. Having access to these seaports, what the West fears and what would actually happen would be a massive change in the economic landscape of Russia for the better. Massive inflow of benefits, massive inflow of trade. Russia would be connected to the world in ways never before because of this enormous coastal landscape at its disposal. A huge unprecedented foray into controlling the trade dynamics in that region. The fourth point is very similar to this. Russia provides a lot of cheap fuel to Europe, to all of Europe, in fact, even Western Europe. A lot of this fuel, and over the past few years, in fact for a very long time, Russia has been trying to make a power play, has been trying to gain an upper hand, gain a controlling hand, have a say, have a very powerful say in European politics, in the European dynamics, in European governance via these gas pipelines, via these fuel pipelines. By providing this cheap fuel, Russia has been trying to make Europe dependent on its fuel and thus trying to gain some power over these states. And the West has been wary about this for a very, very long time. In fact, a lot of Western states are very, very dependent on Russian fuel, and this is another reason why the West is very eager to cut off Russia, taking this war as a reason, very eager to cut off Russia financially and make them buckle so that it becomes a two-way road. It's not just that Europe is dependent on Russia for fuel, but that Russia is dependent on Europe to buy their fuel. This is something that no one talks about. The West is very desperate to make this a two-way street, and this is something that people do not really talk about because this is media control, this is media propagation. Last but not least, Putin is facing a lot of resistance at home, be it from the civilian public or be it from the executive arm of his government, be it from the political factions, be it from the Russian mafia or the Russian oligarchies. There's a lot of dissatisfaction, a lot of displeasure being expressed, and Putin really needs to get a grip over his country. He really needs a positive image boost at home. He really needs the support of the public as well as the government. And you have to understand that declaring war is not something that Putin himself can do overnight. This means that he still has some amount of power. There are still some people beside him. There's still some support. So this means that Putin really wants to take control. He really needs to get back at the top of his game where every word he says goes by unopposed. All of his policies are passed by without opposition. Can put his plans into play without constantly having to face obstacles. He needs to be able to put his long-term plans into place without constantly having to tackle obstacles. These are things that Putin is worried about. He's worried about, he has had undisputed power for the past how many ever years, and he's not ready to lose it all right now. And Russia has always reacted favorably and in mass support for Putin whenever he has had military operations abroad, whenever he has had invasion attempts out of home on other countries, be it Finland or Chechnya or Crimea. There has been massive support for him, and he's hoping for this to pay off. He's hoping that this would bring back the support that he has had, perhaps more, because he really needs this right now to tackle the oligarchy, to tackle the more powerful political fronts that are slowly starting to murmur and grumble against him. Basically, what he really needs is a victory that he can rally back home right now. These are some of the reasons that I thought would really interest you, that would pique your curiosity. I hope you really enjoyed it. Please do like and subscribe. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye.